Welcome to the My Blue Skies Music Podcast, where we dive deep into the power of music, creativity, and collaboration. I'm your host, Kate Dillingham, a cellist and composer, and founder of MyBlueSkiesMusic.com. Joining me today are Lynette Wardle and Chad Smith, fabulous musicians based in New York City. They've built careers on meaningful collaborations that inspire and resonate. Today, together we'll explore their journey, the magic of co-creation, and how embracing the idea of creating connections has shaped their artistry. To give you a little bit of background on these fabulously talented people, Lynette Wardle is a harpist for Richmond and Albany symphonies, also plays with the New York City Ballet, New Jersey, Philadelphia orchestras, the Radio City Christmas Spectacular, and the Broadway show The Notebook this past year. Chad Smith, who also happens to be her husband, goes back and forth between New York and Los Angeles performing Broadway and recording. He has played with the Met Opera, American Ballet Theater, New York City Pops, Philadelphia Orchestra, the LA Phil, the Hollywood Bowl Orchestra. He's recorded for TV and films. He's also the coordinator of the Woodwind Doubling Master's Program at Montclair State University. So welcome, my friends. I'm so thrilled to have you here.
Thank you.
Kate, it's wonderful to see you.
Yes, great to see you, Kate.
Fabulous. Well, let's dive right in. When I say a woodwind doubler, could you explain?
So a woodwind doubler is a term for someone that would play multiple woodwind instruments, hopefully at a high level. Like that's the goal. It's not to just be a jack of all trades, master of none. That you would say, for example, I would play the saxophone in a pit orchestra in a Broadway show, but then surrounded around my chair would be a clarinet and maybe even a bassoon, which I have here too. So I would be considered woodwind doubling at that point. That's not considered woodwind tripling. It's just you can have 10 instruments and still be a woodwind doubler. That's just the sort of the vernacular for what we do and that type of I guess you could say art form. And at Montclair, that I've started a program where the students study each instrument as it were their main instrument. So they're actually studying 4 different instruments.
Wow.
In a master's program. So that's the woodwind doubling term is really very general. I mean, you can also call us multi-instrumentalists, but I think most people know what a woodwind doubler is as far as musicians go.
Absolutely. I'm really interested in talking about what the creative process and what the collaborative process is for you guys. I know you've worked together on specific projects of your own in chamber music and certainly in the pit down at Wicked. And I would love for you to tell me a little bit about your collaborative process and what that means to you. Is it something you share, or is there sort of a hierarchy? That's not quite the right question, but you know what I mean. Anyway, Go right ahead. What does connection mean to you in your creative process?
So, yeah, we have gotten to work together a lot in orchestras, but sometimes that's just happenstance that we both get called to, both play at the New York Pops on a particular Friday night. So that happens and we're collaborating that way. But Chad is he has an entrepreneurial spirit and he's really a force of nature. So he also has this, unbounding energy and likes to create projects and likes to include, the world as he goes, which is great. So he can tell you more about it, but he has this love for music, saxophone music from the 1920s. And, put a whole show together. And so then it was just like, immediately, it was just like, here, can you do this? Can you do this? Can you do this? So that's a lot of, the way they exist is just recordings of saxophone and piano. So I have been put to the task of kind of editing and altering these parts a little bit so they can be played on the harp.
Would you care to demonstrate some of like a theme or an articulation or something that appears in Saxophilm?
Yeah, so we're going to play one thing. It's a piece called Dance Orient. And yeah, we'll play a little phrase from it. It starts with a sax cadenza, and then I'll come in and join him.
Oh, just beautiful. Just beautiful. I love it. Tell me a little bit about the background.
Okay. Do you have a minute?
We got a minute.
Okay. So we're rolling back to 1996, where I first did my bachelor's of music education degree at a school called Westchester University. It's outside of Philadelphia. And I studied with a gentleman by the name of Ted Hegvik. I had no idea going to school of him. Like a lot of students that go to school now, will either go to school because of a teacher, maybe a band director, orchestra director, what have you. I knew nothing about him, so I looked him up. I went into the school library and I found some records. And he was, at that time, a pioneer of Rudi Wiedoeft's music. That was the piece we just played, Danzo Orient, from the 1920s. And I just, for whatever reason, I just fell in love with this music. It's very, this is sort of like a gypsy type of piece. He wrote waltzes. He wrote pyrotechnic kind of saxophone pieces that had the prefix saxophobia, saxophone, saxotrix. So you could say Rudi Wiedoeft was a vaudeville, novelty virtuoso saxophonist. He was really the first saxophonist to take what at that time was a toy and bring it into the concert hall. So in 1996, I studied with Ted. Eventually, we come to about 5 years ago where I actually bought his instrument that he recorded on. And he recorded it on a C melody saxophone, which is in between an alto and a tenor. So it's a little bigger than this saxophone. But it's very special. It's gold plated from 1923. It's a beautiful instrument. So then I guess you could say I got into, freelancing, and I didn't forget about the music and my passion for the 20s and Rudi Wiedoeft's music, but you could say I just didn't have the time. That was the problem. And so I would say not until about 2008, until, obviously when you're going to produce things and get things going, maybe you work a little more, have a little more in your savings account. I started thinking about doing a show featuring his music because I knew standing alone that this music would be hard for me to do outside of maybe a college. So I hired a video editor to pair films up with each one of these pieces. So Saxotrix was with Charlie Chaplin in the Gold Rush. And then, for example, this Danzo Orient was with a vaudeville female dancer that we paired the music together. So that was basically put together for the World Sax Congress in Bangkok, Thailand in 2009. That's where I first did it with Lynette, and I did it with a pianist. But then, not to get too long-winded here, basically it became a show, almost like a radio drama at one point with the films. And so it had a story to it. Then it became now basically what I sort of call the flagship, is what I'm very proud of. I'll be recording the music in London with the Symphony of London and John Wilson in April. So there's orchestra charts now that I've had done to this. So the trio and the piano and the harp and the sax are still integral to the music and the style. But now I'm so excited to get the orchestra going because a lot of this music was only recorded originally with piano. So I think this will be something new. And it'll sound good because, unfortunately, as you know, those old records are real scratchy. and you try to listen to Rudi play and channel that, but it's really hard to get the nuances of what we would call now of the highlights of recording today. So basically, that's where this went. Saxophilm went from, basically 1996 to today.
Wow. Well, that's a true testament to your creativity and your commitment to have that kind of passion and interest in a particular artist or particular type of music or performance practice. I mean, for me as a cellist, it's much more obvious. Like, we have an old repertoire. We've been playing music of Bach, for instance, for 300 years now, and for a saxophone and classical saxophone, your history is much younger, shall we say? And to find someone that I wouldn't say you stumbled upon, but someone that was so influential. I mean, talk about connection over generations, and what speaks to us musically. I find that so inspiring. It's really exactly what I'm trying to get at here with this exploration. Lynette, do you have anything to add to that aspect from your perspective?
Yeah, I mean, it's been interesting to kind of watch with Chad, from afar, but this love of that particular music, he learned about that music from his teacher. So he had this incredible bond with his teacher, and that stuff is wonderful. And, I feel like I've had a bond like that with my teachers, which is, we're always so grateful for when you get a good collaboration between like a mentor and a performer, or a teacher and a student. And it's right on the money when you're talking about, saxophone. The literature is younger or a little smaller. I've always felt the harp also has a limited history. So we have kind of from early 1900s to now. But so I'm, definitely involved in the orchestra a lot more than the saxophone. So I'm have a lot more orchestral repertoire that I've spent. My life has been kind of studying orchestra repertoire, but it's kind of from the 1900s on. So in a concert, I may be there like to play an overture, or I may be there to play like a concerto, for a piano concerto or a violin concerto, or I may be there for the big symphony piece after the intermission that, or a Debussy La Mer or some big Mahler symphony. So I'll be there, but I usually also get to hear something from an earlier time period. Like the orchestra will be playing a Brahms, something, or a Beethoven something, or a Mozart something. So I also get this, education and just reminder that there's this incredible history of music, but like I'm only involved in a part of it. So yeah, our music kind of started early 1900s. It was kind of, it was in France that they developed this final kind of version of an orchestra harp. And they had to get it to the point where it has all these pedals on the bottom where it can play in all the keys. So then it could be chromatic. It could play in any key that the orchestra is playing in. And it finally got to those capabilities. So then there were the composers at the time that were so big at the time were composers like Ravel and composers like Debussy. So they really went all in. I mean, Mahler and Wagner as well. So they went all in discovering what the harp could do. So there's these beautiful harp parts in a lot of Ravel pieces, a lot of Debussy pieces, like La Mer, that big, beautiful symphony has two harps, and they play with, one of the harps can gliss up in one key, and then the other harp glisses down in another key. So it gets these kind of like stereophonic, it was a time of experimentation of what the harp could do. So we're, like my life is mostly in French literature.
Would you care to demonstrate some of that?
I'm thinking of what to play for you. I might play, so like maybe our most quintessential, like what a harpist does more than anything is play the Nutcracker at Christmas time. So that's Russian, of course, that's Tchaikovsky, but it was a similar, era of creativity. But that would be something the harp plays probably more than anything is here's our little cadenza from the Nutcracker.
fantastic. I've got sugar plum fairies in my head.
Yeah. every December, there's some harpist doing that every day.
Oh, yeah. I mean, listen, it's so wonderful. And then what comes next is, you know, it makes me smile just thinking about it. So I want to talk a little bit about, we've talked about sort of history and composers and inspiration. And this is something that's a little bit sensitive to what the collaborative process is. And so the question is, connection can sometimes be tricky, right? Whether it's professional, personal, over the internet, and especially when collaborators have a different creative approach or a different expectation. And I'm wondering just how, if you have any advice, how to navigate those challenges while staying true to the vision, to your vision, to your creative vision.
You want me to start? Sure.
Oh, that's a good question. Well, I would say if we're talking about saxophone and this specific music, it's difficult because, as far as not because Lynette is so wonderful to play with, so it's not necessarily the harp, but it's finding a pianist that understands maybe the both the classical and jazz idioms is important, and that's something that can be difficult. But my pianist, Dalton Ridenour, is amazing, and he is a trained both classical and jazz, but does a lot of what we call hot jazz, which is that stride kind of piano where your left hand is going crazy throughout the piece, and he also has the freedom with the right hand. So, but he also does programs on ragtime himself, so he's a specialist. And I think when you get to this point of music, for me, it's just finding the needle in the haystack in someone that probably is as passionate about that period as you are. And this is not because I've worked with so many different pianists, and they're all great. But then when you find someone that's maybe honed in on that passion like you have, I think the bond is even deeper. You know, because if I can sort of jump on like the connection with Lynette and I, of course we're married. And this is a wonderful thing we could share together, too, is to play together. And I've never played with a harpist really before Lynette. And Lynette is my, I'm not just saying this. I love playing with the harp. I love to play. I get inside the strings of the saxophone. It actually teaches me to be maybe a little more delicate in my playing. And just the color palette that the sax and harp can get, I think, is not necessarily one that someone would come up with necessarily. But I think that connection and us being sensitive musicians and also being able to collaborate in a way personally is important. So I think, one, you have Lynette and I with the personal connection, and then one with Dalton is a connection that's deep because he understands. I don't need to tell him anything. I can send him a recording and he'll just do it. He'll just say, "Oh, you want this?" And he understands all of that natural ability to play the music.
Yeah, it took you a while to find him.
Yes.
But music is such a nonverbal way to communicate. I assume that we all just have to try. You enter into some kind of chamber music situation with someone. You're going to play a concert together or come read music together or go to rehearsal. It's like you have to try and see if it works out. And it's just like first impressions or, all this kind of nonverbal connection. You'll figure it out if you're a good fit or a good match.
That's a good segue to my next question. That's such great advice when we've done our sort of homework, connected with our own experience about who we best collaborate with, who are the sort of natural connections, right? So my next question for you is, I think that the big part of creating your connection is also about stepping out of your comfort zone. For artists who might be hesitant hesitant to collaborate or feel unsure where to start, what would you say to them?
Well, I mean, the first advice is what I already said, is just to try. The fact that we're playing together, I think, is a testament of, you never know where you will find that connection, because this is a pretty oddball combination, I would think, a pretty
unique. Let's call it unique.
Traditional,
unique.
unique.
Yeah. It's unique.
Yeah. So, when we first talked about it, we didn't know if it would work, if the harp would work with the saxophone. The saxophone has a very resonant, like prominent sound, but it actually kind of, the whole harp kind of resonates in this big wooden thing, and the saxophone kind of brings that out. So we wouldn't have known any of that unless you just experiment and try. They've always said that, school is important for that, to make connections and meet people and collaborate, and then those people can, remain your colleagues the rest of your life. So it's have to try.
Would you like to play something further? Maybe Chad, you want to show us some of the other instruments you play?
Play the clarinet for you.
Okay.
I don't know. I'll play a little. I think this is a good segue, because now with the clarinet, we do think of the clarinet as not quite as a jazz instrument and classical like the saxophone, but the clarinet has a huge big band tradition, of course. So maybe I'll play something like something from Mozart concerto, and then I'll play Sing, Sing, Sing solo with the Benny Goodman. So they're going to be totally different ways of playing. One's going to have vibrato and one won't. So if I play... and then if I go into Sing, Sing, Sing... So it's still the same instrument. It's just a totally different approach. In some ways, I'm using the same mouthpiece, but I'm channeling in my ear what Benny Goodman or something from the 1940s would sound like on the clarinet, versus just the classical mood of Mozart or Brahms. Now, back to what Lynette was saying about the school thing. I think a big problem with students now is, and I try to get them out of this box, is taking chances. They don't often want to take chances, and I think a part of collaboration is taking chances and risks, because you're going to fail sometimes. I mean, I think that's a good thing, because at least in my career, there's been failures or things maybe that didn't happen that I wish would have happened, but then maybe they propel you to do something else, or if that door closes, maybe another one opens, So it's not easy, and rejection's not easy, but I think sometimes, depending on your personality, and as with mine, it sort of helps me navigate maybe another possible way, or like get me stronger and push me towards another goal. So
I think that's such valuable advice, really, for any performer or artistic person, that failure is part of the journey. Not that, we welcome failure exactly, but failure, or let's say a door that didn't open, is often what propels creativity and further desire for connection with other artists, and pursuing something that might be a little out of the box. And I think that's so valuable, what you're talking about with your own students. I've had that experience with my students too, that we can get very, how shall I say, tunnel visioned in practicing and making sure our instrument is our instrumental skills are at the top, and of course we have to do that, right? But at the certain point, there's a need for trusting oneself and an understanding that to take risks is what causes us to be creative and to connect with not only with each other but with an audience. And I'm not going to leave out the audience, because the audience is essential to the creative process. If we don't have live human beings to play for, to play with, to inspire, to create an emotional connection through music, it becomes sort of a one-way street, right? I've had experiences, and maybe you have too, where playing for a live audience, your one's playing can alter in the midst of a performance. Like, just the feeling is quite different. Or, there are instances where you may have played a piece many, many times, but because of the energy in the audience, you come away with a different feeling. Have you ever had any experience like that, either one of you?
I mean, we could. I feel like I have that every time. Like I often have to just focus on thinking of it as me, because I'm very aware of the energy coming back to me, and that can sometimes distract me from what I'm trying to do. So I do try to kind of raise my awareness and really just focus on like what I'm playing, what I'm presenting, what I'm giving. And yeah, it's amazing that a different room with different people can provide a different experience coming back. It's quite humbling.
Yeah, and I think not only humbling, but I remember early in my studies, the most important learning, the most important educational experience for me was live performance, was getting out there and playing, because you can practice, for years and years on end, but if you're not out there playing for people, there's a big part of the equation that's missing. And something that I got from my teacher was that you learn more in performance than you do in the practice room. About your playing, about how you communicate, about technique. I mean, I've often had this experience where I learned something super important during a concert, during a performance. It doesn't happen every time, but it's always thrilling when it does happen.
I think it's amazing what our bodies can do, because you're right, like it cannot be replicated when I'm here practicing alone, or if I'm practicing, in an official rehearsal with an orchestra. We are in work mode or rehearsal mode. And then it's amazing. As soon as you can have a run through in the morning with the whole orchestra. And then at night you come at 8:00 for the concert. And it's just, there's something that happens in our bodies. I mean, like we have another level of awareness, of response, of registering that feedback from the audience. There's just, when we talk about 6 senses, there's just like, all of a sudden, like 2 or 3 more senses of awareness, and you hear things differently. You're like, oh, I didn't realize that I'm playing that with this French horn, or oh, I didn't realize that was a solo. Like they're just this, just a whole new level of awareness of what's going on. It's pretty amazing that our minds and bodies do that.
Yeah, I think that really gets to the crux of the matter of connection and the intention of collaboration, right? Collaboration has to have intent behind it, or else it's, I don't need to make a comparison, but I do think we have to be intentional about all the things we do, whether we're getting out on stage or we're planning a new project with our collaborators, whether we get hired for a gig where we got to show up and put the notes down in the right place, and being intentional is kind of what this podcast is all about, getting interesting friends and people to talk about their process and how connecting with other human beings is essential to life, right? It is the essence of life. So I thank you tremendously. Would you like to play anything more before we say goodbye?
I don't think.
I think I don't know. I think
I'm
we're
fine.
good.
You think you're good? All right. Well, I know you're good. I think you're fantastic. I might show just a little bit of what the cello sounds like on My Blue Skies Music. I've done a lot of teaching and playing in master classes, but you can hear what the cello sounds like. So thank you so much. I'm so thrilled to have you, and thank you for being on the debut of the My Blue Skies Music Podcast.
I love it.
Thanks for having us, Kate.
I want to just say, let's see, where am I here? You've given us such a beautiful reminder of connection, of artistic collaboration, of the creative process, not individually, but together and in all the areas where you live and work. And before we go, could you please tell us where to find your work and how they can stay connected with what your projects are and where you're performing?
Cool. Well, Chad has some websites.
Oh, well, go to saxophilm.com. That's saxophilm.com. That's basically my 20s project with saxophone, harp, piano, and silent movies. And like I said, we're going to be recording the Saxophilm, basically the music from Saxophilm, in April in London. And actually, this is a real treat for me. It's going to be my first recording. I've never done recording, so it's a real spiritual kind of thing as well for me. And also, I run a summer institute at Montclair State University called the Broadway Institute. I bring in students from really all over the country. They meet music directors, contractors, other players from other schools. They work with faculty from Broadway. So that's something that students could look up to, the BroadwayInstitute.com. And Lynette, do you have any kinds of things you want to share?
I let him in charge of all social media and websites.
Social media. We're on Facebook and Instagram too. We're trying to keep up with everybody.
What are the handles for your social media?
I'm Nettie Head Harp, so that's my nickname, Nettie Head Harp.
And I'm Chad Smith Woodwinds.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. I want to just thank you once again, and to everyone listening. I hope today's conversation has inspired you to go out and create your connection with fellow artists, your audience, and your craft. Share your thoughts with us on My Blue Skies Music. We can be found at Instagram and Facebook. And don't forget to visit MyBlueSkiesMusic.com for workshops, classes, and more opportunities to connect through music. It is the platform built for music, for musicians to collaborate and to create your connection. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Kate. I love that low register.
Aw, thanks. Until next time, go lightly, stay creative. Remember, the connections you create can change everything.